Okay, here we go. So again, my name's Scott Hansen. I'm sitting in his chair today. Rick Graw is not with us. We'll be talking about Rick in just a few minutes. So anyway, welcome today. This snowy day. It's a good day to be indoors. Uh, I believe the agenda is if you guys have received it and hopefully gone over it. Are there any uh, new items, additional items that you want added, or any editing of the agenda? Please speak now. There we go. Okay, since I'm not hearing any adjustments, uh, so I'll go over the agenda here. We're in the welcome roll call. We've got committee business, committee agency reports, public comment. We'll take a short break. We'll go into smoke management discussion at lunch, and then fall burning overview, rule review planning. That's talking about Oregon smoke management rules and action items, and hopefully adjourned by 2. So that's what's in front of us. So I'll go to Stacy now to go over the rules of the meeting. Stacy.
Thanks, Scott. So this meeting will be recorded, and the meeting summary, action items, and any other items from the meeting will be posted to the ODF website. So for SMAC members, please make sure to change your Zoom name to your name and then who you represent. Keep your camera on. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom reaction feature and use the chat function to record major points and questions. Agency folks, change your Zoom name to your name and your organization. And then folks from the public, please keep your camera off unless providing comment. And everyone, we just ask that you please mute your mic when not speaking and turn it on when you are speaking. So back to you, Scott, for some introductions and roll call.
Scott, you are on mute still.
Go ahead. James Dickinson, you want to say a couple words about who you represent?
Hey, good morning, everybody. James Dickinson. I'm Bureau of Land Management for Oregon, Washington State region. Assistant State Fire Management Officer for integrations. Oversee the fuels community assistance, fuels program, community assistance, fire planning, fire ecology, and fire GIS. Glad to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Leslie?
Everyone, I'm Leslie New-Lamping. I'm one of the SMAC members representing the public. I live in Redmond, Oregon, and have a background in fire and forestry and policy. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Leslie. Chad?
Morning, everyone. I'm Chad Washington. I'm Director of Forest Protection for the Oregon Forest Industries Council.
Okay, thanks, Chad. We don't have a USFS representative on the committee at this moment. Again, my name is Scott Hansen. I'm a non-industrial forest land owner representative, and I've been on the SMAC group for, gosh, I guess it's pushing 9 years now. So that's my background. We'll go to introductions around the room at this point. I'm just lining people up. Pete Parsons? Or Pete's on mute, so maybe we'll come back. Gabriella?
Good morning, folks. Gabriella Goldfarb, Environmental Public Health Section Manager at the Oregon Health Authority.
Thank you. Trevor Miller?
Hey, good morning. Trevor Miller. I'm the Region 6 Fuels Program Manager for the U.S. Forest Service. A little bit of change happening in the background. Likely will be the Forest Service representative with the Advisory Council moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. I did not have some of that knowledge, so I appreciate
Yeah,
you
no worries. It's happening on the fly.
getting me updated. Okay, is Gary Votaw? Gary?
Yeah, had to unmute. Yeah, Gary Vota, ODF, smoke management meteorologist.
Thank you. Randy Riddick?
Randall Ruddick, EPA Region 10, State Implementation Planning Group Team Lead. I work with getting the smoke management plans approved into the state implementation plan.
Thank you. Pete Parsons?
Hi, good morning. Pete Parsons, lead smoke management meteorologist, Oregon Department of Forestry.
Thank you. Sherry Pugh?
Hi, I'm Sherry Pugh. I am a meteorologist with smoke management with ODF.
Thank you. Aaron Mateague?
Hi, I'm Erin McTighe, EPA Region 10. I'm the smoke management coordinator for the region. Nice to see everyone.
Amanda Rao?
Good morning, Amanda Rao, Prescribed Fire Coordinator for ODF.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Shelby? Barry?
Hello, everyone. Shelby Berry, Admin Support for Policy and Planning with ODF.
Thank you. Brittany Hankins?
Also Admin Support Policy and Planning for ODF.
Thank you. Jennifer Horton?
Good morning. Jennifer Horton, Air Quality Coordinator with Oregon Department of Environmental Quality.
Okay. Levi Hopkins?
Yeah, good morning. Sorry, struggling to find the buttons. Yeah, good morning. Levi Hopkins, the Deputy Chief Policy Planning for the Oregon Department of Forestry.
Thank you. Let's see. Carol Trenga.
Good morning, Carol Trenga. I'm an environmental and occupational epidemiologist in Oregon Health Authority. I work with Gabriella.
Thank you. And Burge W.
Oh yeah, this is Will Burge. I'm just with Weyerhaeuser. Thought I would just sit in on the call. I do a fair amount of burning.
Okay, thanks, Will, for joining us today. Have I, excuse me, have I left anyone out or?
Me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stacy.
Yeah. That's okay. Stacy McCarter, I'm the Mitigation Program Manager for ODF, and I think we have Christina next.
Okay, Christina.
Hey, Christina Clemens. I'm the Smoke Management Field Coordinator, also for ODF.
And Michael Kieran.
Good morning, folks. Michael Curran. I'm the new Fire Protection Division Chief for ODF.
Okay. Anyone else I have missed here? I'm trying to be diligent here and giving everyone a chance. Okay, not hearing any of that. I welcome all of you, and I wish we have a good level of conversation and good level of respect for all our different professional backgrounds, and we all can learn even more today. So thanks for being here. So we'll go to committee business. We have circulated a charter amongst the group, and we've received edits, and Stacy was diligently putting those in. Does anyone have any comments on the charter? If not, we're going to have a vote by, I believe it'd be the committee members on that. If it's Stacy, is it more people than the committee members or just the committee members?
It's just the committee members.
Okay.
So you might just want to walk through each, and I can kind of accept these changes. And if anyone has any questions as we go through.
Okay. So we've got kind of the edited pieces here too. This has been with us for quite some time, and it has a mission up at the top, and then purpose, objectives, evaluate the needs of landowners, managers to ensure adequate opportunities to accomplish the amount of prescribed burning, advise ODF on matters to ensure public health protected from smoke from wildfire burning, evaluate consequences, amount of prescribed burning not, let's see, prescribed burning does not, here, let's see. See, I lost that here. Evaluate the consequence when prescribed burning does not accomplish the needs of landowners. Next bullet, ensure program has fees sufficient to cover the program. And then let me go down here ways.
And I think we're removing
That's
all of this.
pretty much it. So does anyone of the committee want to move, or is there any want to move to accept these? And then we'll ask for a second and then any conversation. Is there a
Did you want to go? Did you want to go through the whole document first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see.
That's okay. There's just there's more changes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm getting ahead of myself here. Bear with me. We have 5 members. Let's see. Okay. We have the industrial forest landowner, the non-industrial forest landowner, Forest Service rep, a BLM rep, and let's see, where is, the public, and the public. So we have 5, it's a 5-member committee. And we then have agency staff, ex officio support, ODF, meteorology manager, the secretary. DQ will assign a quality representative, which will assign a health representative. Members serve 2-year terms. Terms will be renewed. Okay, down responsible and duties. See, chair is responsible for leadership of the committee, including ensuring he's planned effectively for collaborative development agenda of the meeting and facilitation to effectively follow the agenda, timeline, participation of committee members, and provides direction setting course committee priorities. Vice chair, of course, sits in for the chair if the chairs cannot be there that day. Elected for 2-year terms. Let's see, take the responsibility to gather the viewpoints or in your, in the group you're represented here, basically. And go a little further. Let's see here, agency staff. Secretary, committee liaison of the Board of Forestry. DQ OHF provides technical policy information guidance consistent with DEQ and OHF's statutory authority. Meetings minimum of twice a year. And then topics will be the status of seasonal burning, report of seasonal smoke intrusions, NACS exceedances, financial report, emissions reduction due to techniques, progress implemented plans, previous program review, and any other representative subjects. Is that about it now? So it's kind of, if you saw it before the edits, it's not, I don't think it's really materially changed here. I noticed you got with virtual attendance option here. So that's one that we're doing right now. Task groups, same task groups, subcommittees to work on issues. Guidelines, committee member staff commit to participate actively and strive to attend all meetings. Committee members will gather and bring forward concerns, viewpoints in the group, foster collaborative discussions, respectful, diversity of opinion, will be sensitive to time constraints. Members seek a large range of information sources. And there we go. Quorum, conducting business. So there's 5 of us. So I guess 3 would be a quorum then to take a vote. So 3 out of 5 members. Okay, is that about it then? Are we still commitments with the consensus? Yeah, I think that might be about it.
Yes, I think that's.
Is there a move to accept these edits as you see them by a committee member? Leslie? Okay.
Move to accept the charter.
Okay, thank you. Second?
I second the motion.
Thanks, Chad. Any discussion amongst us? If not, let's let the committee members vote then. Chad?
Yay.
Yay. Okay, Leslie?
Yay.
Okay. Trevor Miller. I see he's muted right now. And myself is a yay. Trevor?
Yay. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. We have voted to approve the charter as you have seen it here. So before we get to the committee reports, talk a little bit about Rick. Excuse me. He's with the USFS. I think you all know that, and he made a decision to actually retire from the Forest Service. And with that, then he's electing not to continue, as Trevor has told you, for the Forest Service. So we are at a point where, if you remember last July we met, I agreed to be vice chair, Rick chair, and now we, I'm still a vice chair, and we need to, amongst the five of us, elect a chair. And I'll speak for myself here first. I've been on the committee about 9 years and was considering going off into my 2-year term here, which would be, I think, June 2026. So be honest with you, I'm comfortable kind of in my role as co-chair, but I want to open it up to any of the others here, Chad, Leslie, Trevor, if they have a desire to be chair of this committee. Can each of the three of you speak to that at all? Trevor's brand new, so first meeting, so
voluntold.
Yeah,
no,
so
I mean
that's kind of a tough question, as you
exactly
go to your first meeting. Leslie or Chad?
Yeah, Scott, if it's beneficial to the committee, I'd be happy to serve in that role.
Okay.
But I would have to do so with the understanding that you and I would be working closely so that you can pass on some of that institutional knowledge from being a committee member for so long.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chad. And
I would also support anyone else. So if Leslie's
Yeah,
interested, that's
sure.
totally fine.
Okay. Leslie, do you have a comment or?
I think at this time, given professional and personal obligations, I think it wouldn't be prudent for me to run for chair,
Okay.
given other responsibilities. So I appreciate others volunteering.
Okay. So I think that's a good response from everyone. Chad in particular, I would feel comfortable Chad being the chair and myself working for the next year and a half to transmit any of my institutional knowledge to him to be supportive of him in that role. So let's see. I think Stacy, we just go with that then?
James, did you have anything you wanted to
James,
add in? I think I know what your response is, but
yeah, I fully support Chad. Same response of professionally. I think it's not quite the right time right now.
Yeah. Okay. And my apology, I missed that, James. Anyway, if I'm not sure if we take a formal vote on this, Stacy, or we just.
Yeah, I think you do. Yep.
Okay. Let's vote for Chad, for myself to continue as vice chair, and Chad to be chair of this committee. So Leslie?
Aye.
Okay. Chad?
Yay.
Yay. Okay. James?
Yay.
And Trevor?
Approve. Yep.
Okay. And I'm voting for it too. So that is how we're going to move forward here. And I appreciate everyone being flexible. I just found out about this about 3 days ago, so I'm learning on the fly too, like everyone else. So thank you much. And let's go down to a committee and agency reports now. Leslie, do you have a public report?
I don't think so. I think
That's okay.
Everything seemed to go good.
That's fine. Chad?
Yeah, nothing to report in regards to the work here of this committee.
Okay. Okay, good. And James?
I guess it's a short report, but through the wintertime here, we've accomplished several thousand acres, primarily of pile burning. To my knowledge, no issues with smoke or smoke intrusions. Sorry, I should rephrase that: smoke approvals or smoke intrusions of any sort. Things have been going along very well. Kind of in a weird transition, just with the administration transition. So we're sort of in a holding pattern with a lot of projects and work. And then obviously we'll be gearing up more towards continue with obviously wintertime burning here for the next month or so, and then easing into spring transition for probably some more significant underburns along the west side of the state on BLM lands, and continued pile burning throughout the state. So, end of report.
Okay, thanks, James. Trevor, anything you want to say about the Forest Service? What's going on with those guys now?
Yeah, very similar to James, a little disruption in the system, and not quite sure where we'll be. Changes daily. Fall, winter burning has been successful, similar to James, very pile landing based units, but around 57,000 acres in the region, Washington and Oregon. And folks are certainly planning for spring burning, as we usually do. Obviously, a little bit of transition going on here in the Forest Service, with Rick stepping down from representing Forest Service here, and I'll be slipping in and just getting up to speed on all things. So.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. And again, I'm the non-industrial forest landowner representative. And I did talk to people. Ask me sometimes if my opinions are my own, or I was appointed to this job by the state of Oregon, to do this in these 2-year segments. I'm still a member of OSWA, Oregon Small Woodland Association, and I was talking to both the president and the president-elect, and they both told me they much prefer to keep prescribed burning in their toolkit as something that might be helpful for small woodland owners. So that was good to hear. We did a survey back in 2019, and I think we came up with, in the 80 percentile, maybe about 83% of the people were saying that prescribed burning was beneficial. They wanted to continue to have that opportunity. And so I leave you with that then, as I touching base with the two people I know best in the leadership roles of WASA. Okay, I see next on board, Jennifer, do you want to give a DEQ report?
Yeah, it has been fairly quiet on the smoke management front here at DEQ. Through the prescribed burn season, we definitely have appreciated the assistance of Pete and Sherry in monitoring air quality conditions, especially when we had some extended periods of stagnation and cold temperatures. So, appreciate the emails from those folks kind of determining if air quality impacts that we were seeing was from wintertime wood stove use or potentially from prescribed burning. The majority of our air quality impacts were from wood stove use so far this season. But just wanted to, call out some appreciation for Pete and Sherry and the other forecasters in helping us during those times. We had a 1-hour exemption request from Oak Ridge for their community response plan, and met with them, Gabriella, Stacy, and I, and got some comments back to them. So we're anticipating that they will resubmit that in the coming weeks, and likely will get that approval once they resubmit their community response plan with a couple of adjustments. And those are the major updates from DEQ.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. The next I've got on the list is Levi Hopkins for ODF.
Yeah, thank you. Again, good morning. So just a few brief updates for the Department of Forestry. some that folks may or may not be tracking. So currently we have a vacant state forester position. So State Forester Mukomoto resigned last month. So Kate Skinner is acting in that role. And then she's still kind of working out who's going to be filling in as that deputy state forester moving forward. So state forester recruitment, I know the board is prioritizing that to get that going. So unsure really when that will happen, but hoping in the next few months we start seeing some movement there. And then, like Michael mentioned, a little more leadership change for the protection division itself. So Michael Curran started as the division chief on Monday. So got some more stability there with that vacancy now filled. So really for the department, the big thing we're at now is legislative session, just like many others. The big one is the fire funding fix and the several bills that have already been announced, and we're anticipating more once the fire funding work group goes to the legislature next week to kind of report out some of their findings. So we're in a little bit of hurry up and wait right now at the department just to kind of see where things shake out. We're in a long session, so we're not even in the middle of it yet. So a long ways to go. But particularly for this group, we've been anticipating some more prescribed fire, maybe some smoke management legislation, but currently we haven't seen a whole lot. So we're still keeping a lookout on those. Two programs though that we are fully implementing at this time due to legislation over the last couple of years is the Certified Burn Manager program, which seems to still be going great, still getting a lot of traction there. And then the Prescribed Fire Liability program that was launched in October of last year. So still kind of figuring out the kinks in that program, getting a little bit of traction on it, but we're still learning from that. So that's what I had for an update. I'm gonna kick it over to the division chief for some extra comments.
Thank you, Levi. Next up is Gabrielle.
Hey, folks. Nice to be with you all today. I do miss Rick Raw not being here and do wish him well. And thinking about him as I touch on, in addition to just chiming in on the partnership that we've had with DEQ and with ODF with Stacy and on the community response plan work. So that's just echoing that. I wanted to follow up on what we talked a lot about last time with the West Bend prescribed fire pilot and the work that has continued after that Rick Raw was very involved with in terms of the results of the work of the research group that worked on that. And actually, I'm going to hand it off to Carol Trenga to talk about that. But also we'll ask Carol if you have a chance to track down and put in the chat the after action report that the University of Oregon Smoke Management Center put together for that I think would be of interest to this group and really important for the future of expanding the pace and scale for prescribed fire around our smoke sensitive communities. So with that, Carol, do you want to talk about what kept going on, the follow-up work that happened briefly on the research front coming out of that West Bend pilot?
Sure, thanks, Gabriella. Happy to talk about that a little bit. I did drop the link to the West Bend Prescribed Fire After Action Review. It's the executive summary document link in the chat. And there have been several different research activities happening as a result of the West Bend pilot last spring. Rick was primarily involved in the meteorological and forecasting work group. And there's a report forthcoming from that work group. And I believe Justin Conklin, who's taking that over from the work that Rick was doing. And they're in the process of finalizing that report. I reviewed a draft of it, I think, last week. So it should be coming out in the next, let's say, month or so is my best estimate. There was also a community survey done. There were 2 phases of a community-based survey done. One was a convenience sample that was sent out. Several hundred surveys were returned from members of the community, and then there was another component that was done with an academic partner. And those results haven't been fully summarized and sent out yet, but we can make them available to the team, to this group when they're available. We can send them out to Stacy. And I can say a little bit about the health impact monitoring that we did with Lane County, or excuse me, Deschutes County as a partner. As some of you know, we always monitor near real-time syndromic surveillance in Oregon Essence, which looks at emergency department and urgent care center visits. And we look at that for primarily respiratory and non-infectious respiratory related conditions during wildfire season and also during prescribed burns. And during the West Bend pilot project, we did monitor those visits through Essence syndromic surveillance. We did see increases. We look at the proportion of visits, for example, that are due to respiratory conditions during times of burns or smoke intrusions, or wildfire smoke for that matter, compared to the proportion that is normally observed. And for Deschutes County, we did see increases of several percentage points in the proportion of non-infectious respiratory visits as a percent of overall visits. And those occurred in the 1 to 4 days following elevated PM 2.5. And we were just looking at the 24-hour average at an AQI of unhealthy or above, because those are the data that come through the Essence system. So, on the plus side, the magnitude of those increases is comparable to what we sometimes observe during other air quality events, and that includes inversions and wildfire smoke. Due to the small numbers that we see, because we're looking at a fairly small geographic area and kind of a subset of the population in that area, we can't say that all the increases observed were associated with changes in air quality, but there's a very high likelihood that a fairly high proportion of those increases were due to changes in air quality from smoke. For those of you who know the Bend area, they get a lot of downdraft settling around the river, which persisted on some days well into the morning until midday. And so those were the events that I think caused the most issues with health visits, because people are getting out and about and starting their day, as opposed to events that happen during the night, although there's still some infiltration into people's homes, depending on the porosity of the house and whether they have air cleaners and that kind of thing. So that's a nutshell version of the health impacts that we saw with that. And we'll be sure to have some of those reports sent out to the group once they're available. Thanks for your time. And I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Okay.
So I would just say we did see a signal. So there was something, but we didn't see a huge signal. In other words, there wasn't significant health impact. There wasn't also just a significant public outcry from the, significantly increased burning. But it also just means we have a bit more to do to build that resiliency in the community. So, but all in all, it doesn't take away from the overall kind of sense that it was very successful protection of public health while significantly expanding prescribed fire. So with that, I do need to apologize. I'm going to stay on for another 20 minutes, and then I have to hop to, as Levi was talking about, legislative session. The governor's office convenes the legislative coordinators, and I cover that. So I'll be hopping off for a while and then coming back. Thanks for the time.
Okay, thank you for both Gabriella and Carol. I did want to say a couple things. I looked at the graph that you folks produced last July's meeting. I really like that. I'm kind of a graphical person. It helps me with my understanding. And I was looking on the left side of that. It's PM 2.5 air quality related respiratory illness, and it said it looked to me like 8 to 13% of the visits, maybe roughly, were respiratory related. That's kind of what. If I'm wrong, Carol, correct me here because maybe I misread. But I was just wondering if that is true, if the dots are kind of in that range, what would be, if it was, say it was 9% or 10%, then what would be the, could you say the number of people maybe that represented that? Would there be any way to get just the number, the absolute number of people that were affected on that day?
Yes, you're reading it correctly. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm familiar with the graph. I think one of the reasons we use proportions like that is because we're looking at change.
Okay.
So typically we'd see maybe 4 to 6% of visits accounted for by
respiratory.
those non-infectious respiratory, or that query as we call it. And we can convert that to numbers. It's typically more reliable to look at proportions.
Okay.
But we do have a sense of numbers. I can't give you that off the top of my head because I don't have the data in front of me. But yeah, and as Gabriella said, I think, well, Deschutes County is doing very well, I would say, compared to some of the other areas that see a lot of smoke, and there are other areas that are doing very well with protecting public health due to messaging and their intervention programs around air filtration devices. So, we're really doing a tremendous amount in Oregon to help protect public health while we're still making progress with prescribed burning and also still seeing more fires and smoke. So that's the good news side.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry, on top of that, I just wanted to add the other good news is where we certainly saw that with the West Bend in terms of the degree of collaboration between local public health and the district for USFS. And actually, I think we just had a conversation, as Jennifer was saying, with Oak Ridge, and those folks similarly were talking about really good, strong collaboration with the district, and those kinds of partnerships across lots of folks, but those are really key to getting out the public health messaging.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's excellent news, really. The communities are kind of maybe understanding the situation, and that's it's a balancing act, I guess. So we got to do any prescribed burning, and of course people's health is very important too. So thank you. One thing on Gabriella, I was going to mention Rick leaving. There's no one more than me that recognizes his breadth and depth of knowledge. And I was a little shocked when I got a call about 3 days ago, because he's, boy, he has a lot of institutional knowledge. You just can't replace that overnight or in a year or two. So I should have said that earlier. I'm very appreciative all of what Rick has done for the Smoke Management Advisory Committee, because I think he's gone far above the amount of work he maybe had to do but wanted to do. So kudos to Rick. I hope he has a great retirement, and for sure we miss him here in this committee. So.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Okay, next up then is the EPA, Aaron.
Sure. Hi. I have a few updates to share, similar to what Trevor described. We're going through a lot of change right now, so my comments will be kind of limited. But a few things that I can share. So in case you weren't aware, we have a new administrator of the agency, Lee Zeldin. And then for Region 10, all of the regions also get political appointees. during change in administration. Right now, Dan Opolsky, who's a career employee, is acting as regional administrator, but in a couple weeks on the 24th, our new regional administrator is coming in from Alaska. Her name is Emma Pokon, Pokon. She's coming from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, where she's been the commissioner. So we're excited to have her come in with some regional knowledge and experience working in a state agency will be really helpful. And then some of our routine work is underway, but a lot of our activities are on pause right now as we await guidance from the new administration. So a couple of things that I can share that we were really active in doing over the past year include some of the things that folks have touched on, some of the work in West Bend and Deschutes National Forest, the pilot project there. We're planning something similar in Central Washington this coming year, 2025 and 2026. And it actually stood up an incident management team, a really similar structure to what we did in Bend, really trying to pull in some of the learnings to do something similar in Washington. On the EPA side, that's on pause, but we're hopeful we'll get the green light to continue that. And this group may be interested in hearing about that work in the future. Certainly trying to pull in a lot of the learnings from Ben and the same system used there with the IMT structure. We also hold a smoke management conference every year. We've done this for about 15 years, definitely before my time. And we're still hoping to have that meeting. It was scheduled in Boise this year in April, but that's also paused the planning for that. We're hoping to do something virtual around the same time. So just sharing for awareness, some of the topics we cover in this call will come up at that meeting. And we're hoping to have a half-day virtual meeting during that same time frame, the week of April 22nd. So stay tuned. And also hoping to just postpone that in-person meeting that we had scheduled in Boise till later in the fall to give us some more time to brief folks and again, hopefully get the green light there. So we'll keep you all apprised. And I think, let's see, was there anything else? Oh, Gabriella reminded me of some of the work with a new task force that we stood up last year, working with Forest Service and a lot of agencies on this call. It's the Pacific Northwest Prescribed Fire and Smoke Management Executive Task Force. It's a mouthful, no good acronym, unfortunately. But that work pulls together lots of different agencies who do environmental, land management, and public health work in Oregon and Washington to start to really live out the principles of a letter of intent, which I can put in the chat box in a minute, that says we want to work better together around prescribed fire, smoke management, and public health in our region in the face of the wildfire crisis. So we imagine that work will be given the green light again soon too, but it's on pause. We're hoping to have another meeting sometime this spring with executives. That's folks like the regional forester, the regional administrator, the directors of the different agencies, state foresters. So it's helpful to hear the different updates on who's sitting in those positions and to make sure I have the right people on the list when we can set that up. So I think that's all I had to say. Randall, if you think of anything else, jump in, but I'll pause there and see if there are questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My last bullet here is for other reports. Is there someone on our virtual call here that has a report for their committee or the group that they represent? I want to make sure they have a chance to talk. It is now about, well, let's see. Got one more thing. Public comment. Is there anyone online who has a public comment?
Scott, so I think we should stick to the agenda time for the public comment,
Okay.
just in case people are jumping on just for that.
Good point.
So that's at 10:15. So we've got a couple options here. We could have the smoke management or the fall burning overview.
Okay.
From the afternoon. If Christina and Sherry are ready, we could do that. And that should take us up closer to that
10:15.
public comment.
Okay, sure. That's a good idea.
Christina, are
ready.
you ready to present early? Kind of hitting you blind.
Yeah, no, affirm.
Okay.
I will share my screen here.
And just so everybody knows, as we hit 10:15, I will interrupt just so we can hold true to that public comment period.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so again, my name's Christina Clemens. Can everyone see my screen? I guess I should ask that, confirm that.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm the smoke management field coordinator for ODF, and one of my main core duties is the smoke audits and monitoring as required by our enhanced smoke management plan. And so for this year, the year of 2024, we had 38 burn day and pre-burn day audits completed, and we shoot for about 30, which is about 1% of our burns in the state. And then my audits are done randomly for the most part. I do intentional audits towards areas that I haven't visited yet, areas that are showing some sort of a trend that warrants an investigation, like abnormal fire behavior, unique burns, abnormal fuel moistures, or even abnormal weather patterns. And so for this year, the unique burn was the West Bend pilot project. I need to move my little screen here. And so you will see that the Forest Service or federal, between Forest Service and BLM, they're about 50%, about half of our burning for the season. And this is the audit. This is the audit, the sampling I did. So it generally represents our typical, clients who are burning. But this year there was a focus on the West Bend, and you'll see that a little later, and I'll mention that. But again, the first one was a pre-burn audit. The second one is the actual burn day audit. The difference is a pre-burn is obviously I'm measuring fuels and getting fuel loadings before it's on fire. It's much easier that way. And then just kind of from history from 88 on, you'll see that this is burn day audit sampling. You'll see in 2023 it was very small because it was more pre-burn audits because of the West Bend project, and then this year in 2024 they burnt a lot of those units, so that burn day audit went up in the sampling. So I wanted to refer back to 2023 burn day tonnage. You'll notice that a lot of times the piles are going to have more audits because there are more piles burned in Oregon than there are underburned. So that screen is a typical shot of sampling. But this year it's flipped. And again, that is because of the West Bend pilot project focus. So it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of we focused on some underburning, and so that's reflected there. We tried to get our folks to, oops, we got a question. Can I take it at the end? Can I finish, and then I'll come back to you, Chad?
Yeah.
So we try to have our folks when they do their fuel load reporting, and then I go out and I audit it, it should be within that 50% range. And so this year, just about everybody was right in that range where they're supposed to be. We had no one, let me think. So there's no one over reporting and only 2 under reporting. And so for the over reporting, the concern there is if people are over reporting, that means they did not maximize their burn window. They could have burned more. And we want to maximize our burn windows because it's important to get those things done. And the concern with under reporting is then you could actually accidentally end up with like an intrusion because you had more fuel loading than you reported or than you thought. So we only had 2 that showed up in that range. So that's a very good number. So overall, we did really great this year, last 2024 for our percentages in tonnage. And again, that was because we were really working closely and in partnership with our federal partners and the West Bend project. And then, of course, some of the highlights, again, as you've heard many times, that West Bend pilot project here, we got a lot of interagency cross-training. We had Forest Service, we had private, we had all kinds of folks out there. And in this particular shot, we were actually comparing side by side the Browns planer transect
with the simple methodology that I use, which is just a modified Browns planer. And the students were getting to do both of them and compare them side by side, see how it worked. And so that was just a really great opportunity. The simple fuel loading methodology that I use is the standard of how I audit programs. So I really like for people to understand how they're going to get audited. So when they're reporting their tonnage, they know what's going into it. So that was a really great opportunity to work with folks. And I love, especially look at the picture, there's a lot of young people. So that's super great to like be training up the new generation to get familiar with their piece of ground, touch it, and know what their fuel loading actually is rather than some of the older traditional days we used to do. Okay, and so that is that. And so I guess I think Chad had a question.
I did. Could you go back to the slide where the situation had flipped and there was more underburning reported? That one.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit how we end up with audited numbers higher than the reported numbers?
Okay, so reported numbers is that's the burners. They're saying I have 4 tons per acre that I'm going to burn. I go out, do an audit, I remeasure the fuels, and I come up with something larger or more tonnage per acres. So that's how that happens.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right, no worries. So I am
Is
done.
that-
I will stop sharing my screen.
Christina, is that a common occurrence, or do you usually find that the reported tonnage is closer to audited, or what is the standard situation there?
Yeah, standard situation is the people are within range generally. When I first started the program, it had been vacant for 22 years, so there was no one going out and doing the actual audit on the ground. And so a lot of folks, because they can get cleared on tonnage, there might be like a 500-ton cap in a particular day. So some people were like basically kind of fudging the numbers to show less tonnage so they can get their burn approved. And as I've been out there working with folks, showing them, here's the best way to, if you can't burn at this elevation, if you go higher up, maybe it is okay to burn. So, your tonnage isn't, fudging your tonnage isn't the best way to do it, because then you don't want intrusions, because then that has, negative impacts if you get intrusions. And so I've seen over the last, since like about 2018, I've seen a shift where people are getting their tonnage more accurate. I think that I created that methodology that's faster, that people are like, okay, I'll do a transact if I can do it in 15 minutes. And that's basically what I got it down to. So people are more willing to do that. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I think we're starting to make some headway there.
Great. That sounds like progress in the right direction. So thank you for that effort.
Looks like James has a question.
Hey.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Hey, Christina, what you said you did a side-by-side comparison of the Browns Transect and your simple method. What typically, or what's the range of comparison there?
0.2%, 0.02% is what we came up with earlier on. And then in that particular day where we were working, I want to say it was within, I think it was about a ton difference, but people are looking like, oh, here's a big log, I want to measure that. So there's some bias and you have to like calibrate your eye and whatnot. So it's been accepted by the Forest Service, and I understood the BLM about 4 or 5 years ago as the process that they agreed to use for auditing.
What method are you using for versus the Browns Transects?
So it's what I'm doing. It's a modified Browns Transect. So for example, Browns might go out 100 feet. I discovered you can do 37 feet and get the same results. Understanding that that's a 10%. If it's an acre, that's a 1/10 of an acre. So you got to multiply by, there's some of those kind of factors in there. And I have a reference guide on our website. It says the fuel loading reference guide, that you can click that and you can see all the calculations. I've noted it back to which, if it's Rothmel's algorithms or all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it.
For sure.
So I believe it's going to be my portion of the fall burning overview. There we are. How's my screen? Can I get a thumbs up or a confirmation?
It's good.
Thank you. And I realize at 10:15 I may have interruption, but I should be completed by that time as well. So I'm gonna look at the fall burning overview. Just a reminder, I'm Sherry Pugh. I'm a meteorologist with smoke management with Oregon Department of Forestry. I'm going to show some of the numbers and just talk into more of the meteorology side as well of what we saw during the fall, our incidents, the one intrusion we had as well. When we're looking at the fall numbers comparison, there's not a whole lot to look at. It's just to mention that we're certainly doing a lot of burning in the fall, and these numbers are continue to kind of adjust some as well as burns are recorded and noted and updated and fixed in the database as well. So it compared to past years of fall burning, not too much difference is shown in this past 2024. And this is a look at the whole year, past 3 years, not just the fall, but looking at the entire report. And again, it's not too far off, within range. There's not been too many dramatic changes. I'll speak about the weather and some of how that affected our burning as well. As far as monitoring smoke, which is of course super important for our smoke management department, we had one smoke intrusion around Coos Bay. I'll talk about some of the notes about that. And there were 6 smoke incidents. And just a reminder of what our thresholds are when we're looking at those nephelometers from DEQ. We're looking at when that 1 hour, the whole hour report, it's up to a 70. Over 24 hours, if it hits a 26 as an average, and then a next exceedance hits at that 35. So a focus on the smoke incident that we had in Coos Bay. It was just 1 hour that we popped up to 70 at that above 70 at that nephelometer in Coos Bay. Want to note that there was the burn the day before, and that there was a building upper level ridge that helped to lead to this particular intrusion. There were other smoke incident type smoke reports on that same day, kind of around this time, and in the following days. That's kind of often what happens when we're dealing with upper level ridge situations, where we have more stable and the smoke sticks around and smolders and that kind of thing from pile burning. So that's a note on our incident that we noted in the fall. Here's a look at that air quality nephelometer to tell you a little bit about that story. You see the spike at where the incident was or intrusion was, and then you see some later down the days going forward after that as well. That was the incident level. And these are our fall incidents. Our incidents for the fall mostly involve smoldering overnight. So that's one of the reasons why, as Jennifer Horton mentioned, a lot of emails get sent out anytime there's that overnight smoldering to try to investigate. It's a tricky time because with, even a situation like recently, right now, with lots of cold weather, a lot of wood stove smoke, we're looking at those signatures and trying to look at, is the smoke a source of local smoke and wood stoves? And is that what has popped up the nephelometer? Or is it a prescribed burn that's contributing to that smoke? It's a challenge for us to forecast. It's a challenge for us burning anywhere near an SSRA, especially in those patterns of upper level ridging. But the majority of our fall incidents this past fall were as a result of that smoke overnight smoldering kind of situations. There was one time when there was a miscommunication and more tonnage was allowed than should have been allowed, and that caused an incident in smoke. That's the only kind of exception to the overnight smoldering that we saw. So just to review, it was often overnight smoldering and that one incident of communication that led to incident level smoke for us in this fall. And then the intrusion notes, again, the smoldering pile, just for an hour, met that level of intrusion, and then it was actually done. That intrusion was the day after they burned. It wasn't even the day of. And it was a big factor was the upper level ridging. We often do pattern recognition. We're looking for patterns that cause, stagnant conditions, low ventilation that are going to have smoke that may lead to overnight smoldering, because that's what frequently, as you see, is what we're tracking when we're tracking incidents and intrusions. I want to talk about the weather that we saw this past fall. One note is that prescribed burning was delayed because of the wildfire season. We had a very detrimental wildfire season this past year in Oregon, and it carried on later on into the fall, so that we, of course, are not going to start any kind of prescribed burning until districts are out of their wildfire season. And so a lot of places were late this year. And so we were delayed. But we certainly had a lot of burning throughout the fall, despite that delay. We did have some more stagnant conditions in December and January at times. That sometimes happens into the winter. These might have been it's a little bit early for us or so, but when we have those stagnant conditions, that changes a lot of our workload. We are not burning anywhere near an SSRA if we can help it. In those conditions where we're worried of smoke getting into an SSRA, a lot of times our smoke model, when we're looking at it, it's going to assume more of a clean atmosphere. And in these stagnant condition periods, we know the atmosphere is not clean. We know the air shed already has smoke in it from either other prescribed burns, local burning, or again, wood stoves. And so that's going to help us to want to limit the burning near an SSRA because, as we know, it's not just a measure of how much smoke we put in, it's how much smoke is already there from the other local sources. There was this past fall, I'll show you some maps here. We had higher precipitation than average and some warmer temperatures through kind of our main burning period from October to December. And just to note that we have not stopped our instructions. We're still having prescribed burning going on. It's a little slower because there's a snow event going on, impacting a lot of us. A little harder to get to your burns if there's snow on the roadways to prevent that. But we haven't stopped. In previous years, we were able to maybe limit or slow down some of our written instructions. That's not been the case here recently, and that is not the case for this year either. So looking at that precipitation, I wanted to mention how it's just been a wetter from October to December than average, and those warmer temperatures as well. That leads to burning conditions of not too bad. It's less stagnant when you have more precipitation. You can have better mixing heights and that kind of thing. Other than some periods that we had, like I mentioned, during the winter when we did have more stagnant weeks. Snow water equivalent here at the end of the fall, just to talk about somehow how we kind of progress through our 2024 fall burning season. Because of those wet patterns, some of the more higher elevations, we're able to have some decent snow values. I know here recently we've had some dry periods, especially in parts of January, but we're recovering quickly this week, as a matter of fact. So looking at our fall soil moisture, this is kind of an example of that precipitation I was mentioning. We had some higher precipitation and we had some better soil moisture areas as a result throughout the fall, from October 1st in the beginning where there were some more dry bits and pieces, and then into December you see some higher soil moisture. And as we look at the drought monitor, it tells the same story. I want to note on the drought monitor, the yellow is not necessarily drought. It's abnormally dry. It's kind of a D0. It's on the way to drought. And the next color up, I guess, is a lighter orange or a tan. That one is where we see the drought. And you can see throughout the fall, we had some lessening of drought conditions. So when we have some of those more moisture things to help us, prevent have more safer prescribed burning during the fall with the higher moisture. That's something we were able to see in this past year. So that's going to conclude my talk. So in general, for our fall season, lots of burning. I want to mention again that it was a little later because some of the wildfire seasons, some of the districts stayed in that season a little bit longer. Had a lot of moisture and a lot of warmer temperatures that helps to not necessarily have snow at the lowest levels, but snow for higher levels and that kind of thing to help with good conditions. But we did have some stagnant few weeks here and there into the winter where it was more of a challenge. And those are the times when we really have to consider burning near SSRAs, as well as doing a lot of time doing smoke investigations to see if we have incidents or intrusion levels that is contributed by prescribed burning, or is it, just stagnant conditions and the wood stove smoke and local smoke has added up. I think that will conclude my element of the presentation. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take those. Okay, thank you.
You're on mute.
Will it be out on the website or your report?
My presentation?
Yeah.
It could be.
Okay. I mean, do you not traditionally put it out there, or that's fine?
This is more just presented for SMAC,
Okay.
this specific presentation, and we've tried to, in the past we've had some requests to talk a little bit more about the weather, talk a little bit about good and bad, and not just focus on the intrusions. And so that was kind of the efforts of today's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Chad.
This question is actually for Stacy. Are we going to be posting the recording of this meeting so that folks, if interested, could just review the presentation here?
Yes, absolutely. The entire meeting is recorded, and then we upload that to the SMAC webpage, along with the meeting minutes and any, outside external presentations that we have.
Wonderful. So if folks are interested, that's an easy way to access that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
So we've got about 4 minutes. I don't think it's too early to call for public.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna do that 10:15. We're pretty close to that now. Are there any public comments by anyone who's signed in today? Not hearing any. Stacy, do you want to take a 15-minute break now, or what do you think?
Yeah, so we're moving along pretty well. So I think we should take a 15-minute break now and then just jump back into the agenda. Okay. And I say we just shoot to try and get the meeting fully complete before we break for lunch, if the members aren't opposed to that. Pete, did you have something?
Yes, Stacy, I would just voice my support for that.
Okay.
We need to drive to Portland to prepare for the ODFW commission meeting. So the earlier we can get on the road would be great.
Perfect.
We're going to break till 10:25 then, or?
Yes. Looks like Pete's trying to say something.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had, I'll take 1 minute. I just had two quick comments, if I could, regarding the two presentations that we just had. First is for Christina's presentation on the fuel and the fuel loading and so forth. I want to point out how incredibly important her work has been to, as a control for everybody in the field to measure their fuel loading in a similar manner, because our forecasts and our tonnages allowed in our forecast are based on fuel loading. So if everybody has a uniform way of doing their fuel loading, it makes our forecasts and the amount that we are allowing for tonnage far more accurate, and really goes a long way toward minimizing smoke impacts and maximizing the burning opportunities. Can't say enough about how important that is, and the work that Christine has done to standardize that across the state. Incredibly important, because the whole format that we're based on is on empirical studies of how far smoke travels depending on how much smoke there is. And again, the more uniformly we measure that, the better off we are. The other comment I wanted to make on Sherry's and the amount of burning that's done, one of the reasons that we've had to ramp up our forecasts now for the last at least 2, maybe 3 years, are now issued from October 1st through June 30th. We go right through the year. We do not stop. We have forecasts issued every day of the year during that time, because the burning doesn't stop. And we've had an increase in the amount of burning done near SSRAs, which is the most incredibly critical burning, the toughest to work with. It's very labor intensive for the smoke management program to work with those areas. In most recent years, we've had burning most every day right through the winter in the Medford Ashland area, but the critical areas do rotate around. And I did just a quick workup with the help of Stacy and Christina, and during the non-fire season, which is when we're doing the prescribed burning, we're having prescribed burning going on approximately 6 out of every 7 days somewhere in the state. About 86% of the time there's burning going on. So with Sunday probably being the day that has the least burning, I don't know that for a fact, but just anecdotally, I'm looking at the, all the time working with it, that's probably the day with the least burning. So basically burning every other day, all from October all the way through June. So that is a paradigm shift in the way things are going, so the total amount of burning may not be increasing, but the labor intensity of the program has increased because of where the burning is being done and the fact that it is being done most days during the non-fire season. That's my comments on both. And thanks to both of those folks for doing their presentations.
Thanks, Pete.
So where are we at right now? We're at 10:15 right now.
Yeah. Should we just take a break till 10:30 and come back at 10:30?
Okay, let's do that. Break
okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I've got 10:31 now. I see a few people are back.
Shall we go ahead and get started?
Yeah. Do you want to do your report then, Stacy? Or
Yep. So the smoke management fund overview is next. So let me share my screen here. Let me know when you can see that.
Okay, I can see it.
Okay, great. So committee members should have gotten the graphs beforehand on Monday, but we'll go ahead and get started here. So this presentation is intended to inform you on the status of the Smoke Fund, which was established in 1991 based on user fees to fund the administration of the smoke management program, which ensures Oregon maintains clean air quality standards while maximizing burn opportunities. We currently have 4 3/4 staff, which includes 3 forecasters, a field coordinator, and 3/4 of a manager position. Revenue comes into the smoke fund from fees assessed to burners for set amounts based on the acreage and burn type. First of all, I'll show you revenue and expenditures and how they've changed over time. I'll outline personnel costs and show you a graph displaying fund information over the past 10 years. Then we'll get into some projections and needs for the program. We'll finish off with questions and discussion. I'll pause each time before I go to the next slide in case committee members have questions. Any questions before I get started? Take that as a no. All right, this first graph shows you where the smoke fund revenue comes from. Here we're looking at just 2024. You see in light green here, the revenue billed to the Forest Service was just over 273,000. In blue, you see what was billed to the BLM, which was right under 50,000. In yellow, this is the private burns. Those fees totaled about 128,000. And then in the dark green, those are revenue from our two contracts, one with ODA and one with DEQ, and that totals about 59,000 for 2024. The total revenue for 2024 was just over 511,000. Any questions on this slide? And I can't see raised hands or anything, so you'll have to yell at me if somebody's raising their hand. Okay, thanks. All right, this next graph shows that same revenue information, but it's for the last 5 years. This shows the variation in the revenue that can come from the Forest Service. BLM was under a fixed price contract from 2018 through 2020. And that's why you see blue here, no blue, and then again in 23 and 24. The amounts received through that contract from BLM were more than they burned. So we had to tally up their burns and then finally got them caught up in 23. The private burners in yellow, they generally stay anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000. They don't fluctuate too wildly. And then you see those contracts in the dark green with the little tiny increases each year for inflation. Questions on this one? Okay. The next graph is a look back at the last 10 years of expenses. The blue bars in the front are the service and supplies. This includes all of our travel, phones, vehicles, computers, website maintenance, anything like that. And you can see that the unit staff do a great job at keeping these costs as low as possible. The orange bars are the personnel costs. This shows how personnel costs have continued to grow each year, which is to be expected with cost of living increases and step increases. You see a little jump here in 2017 when we brought on our smoke management field coordinator, Christina, who handles our field audits, education, the annual report, fuels assessments, and so much more. It stays relatively flat until you get to 2023, when you see a rise due to inflation, which I'll go over on the next slide. Questions on the personnel and service and supply expenses? All right, so this is the chart that shows the U.S. inflation rates for the past 11 years. You can see the increases in the personnel expenditures from the last slide mirror these jumps in the nation. Although the state is 1 to 2 years behind, we have a harder time at keeping up with the times and being flexible and nimble. So it takes us a little while to catch up. We had our 6.5 COLA increase in 2024, and then our last one just at January 1st of 25. So the estimated inflation rate for 2025 is anywhere from 2.4 to 2.9%. Chad.
Lacey, it's just worth noting that these are cumulative, right? So that 7% increase does not then reset back to 0% inflation for 2022. That's the new baseline. So
right.
These are cumulative, so that cost is actually compounding, not going down, even though
right.
it appears as though it's going down.
Right.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yep. Any other questions on this one? So on this one, I've listed out the 4 3/4 positions and the funding associated with each. So you see the Natural Resource Protection and Sustainability Manager. That's myself, and I'm funded 8 months into the smoke program. And that's due to the fact that I have other staff that are not in doing work for the smoke fund that I supervise. So it's just 8 months here. And then you've got the 3 forecasters for 12 months, and you've got the field coordinator for 12 months. When you add in the other payroll expenses, which is medical, dental, retirement, vision, all that stuff, it costs about $260,000 a year to fund the personnel that it takes to run the program. Questions on this one? And then here you see that 6.55 COLA increase January 25. The next box shows the change in average cost for monthly salaries for the NRS 3 staff, going back to 2019. Just to show you the increased cost of the program. Again, these are attributed to cost of living increases, step increases, retirement contributions, those other payroll expenses and benefits. So the difference between 2019 and 2024 is a monthly increase of almost $5,000 for one. A yearly increase is $57,600 for one NRS 3, and then all of them together is over $230,000 that hits that program. These are fixed costs that we have no control over, and adding to the issue is that we are understaffed and in dire need of an additional forecaster, which would enable staff to take much needed leave to help avoid burnout. They would have time to maintain aging models and systems. It would enable them to have time for research and development in order to keep up with changing technologies. And they would have the capacity to attend trainings, meetings, and give presentations that we currently have to turn down due to capacity issues. Questions on this chart? This next one is the 10-year look back at the fund. It's showing the revenue in the front set of bars in light blue per calendar year back to 2015. The middle green bars are total expenditures. The dark blue in the back is the fund balance December 31st of each year. If you look at the revenue, you can see a jump in 2019. It's most likely due to the change in the smoke rules around intrusion thresholds, which led to more opportunities to burn without causing intrusions. As you can see, until 2021, the revenue and expenditures fluctuate a little bit, but the fund balance stays pretty healthy. Starting in 22 is when revenue dipped. This was due to less burning being done, and there were some technical issues with getting the federal burns entered into the database. We got caught up with those in 2024, where you can see the revenue tick back up. You can see the rise in personnel costs, and the decrease in the revenue has left the fund balance as of December 31st, 2024 at just over 164,000. So this little blue box right there. If the fund goes to zero or below, the staff and operating costs of the program are covered by the agency, as ODF's agency funds are pooled. As smoke revenues come in, they will cover any deficit amounts. In the short term, we're okay, but as we move into a rule review process, the smoke fund solvency will need to be addressed. Fees have not been looked at since 2014 when they were unchanged. Questions on this one?
So the 23 and the 24, really the expenses kind of skyrocketed there. Is that, do you attribute that to mainly inflation then, or?
Yes.
Wow.
It was inflation, just like I explained on the last graphs. It's, you know, we were generally seeing 2.5, 3% COLA increases once or maybe twice a biennium. And through COVID, there were special payments that were given because of that. There were, and just larger cost of living increases. And it's just the cost of everything went up. So Other questions?
So there's no more money coming in total revenues. We're kind of, quote, kind of caught up to where we should be on revenues. Is that correct?
Well, the revenues are so uncertain, right? We as far as collecting, we're yes, the Forest Service and BLM are completely paid up. There's no kind of back monies that we're waiting for.
Okay.
And the private burners are billed monthly.
And you're saying after 2024, there's some kind of short-term, I don't know, fixes, if you will, to kind of keep everything flowing. But what, kind of looking down the road, when do you see that not working? I mean, I know this is just kind of looking into the future. I'm not looking for an exact number, but
yeah.
Are you thinking that maybe for a year or two that you have some fixes, and then after that we really have to do some soul searching? Or
Well, I think we need to start doing the soul searching now.
Okay.
Planning for the
Sure.
future. I just want to let you guys know that the work won't stop, the forecast won't stop going out, phone won't stop being answered,
Sure. Yeah.
burning won't stop, just because the fund is not supplying enough money to keep the program going. The agency covers those costs until those revenues come in and then get balanced, and then before the end of the biennium, the agency will have to decide what to do about those shortfalls, whether those are asks or we have it, you know what I mean? Fix some sort of influx of cash from some location. But during the rule review that's coming up, is when, we all need to take a hard look at how do we make this fund
Sure.
pay for itself.
Yeah. And we need the help of ODF to kind of keep educating us,
Yes.
but yeah, we need to start looking for, looking for ways to decrease expenses or increase revenues, obviously, as we move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I see.
Yeah.
Is the intent that this fund is self-sustaining, that it should,
Yes.
all revenues should cover all costs?
Yes. The legislature has given us a set amount of staff to get the work done. So the fund has to pay for that staff. And like I said, I mean, we're in dire need of another forecaster. So we've got to make this fund either, pay for itself completely, or, strategies of figuring out how else do we fund this program if we don't do it based on fees.
So the statute dictates the staffing level. The staffing expenses are just set already.
Yes.
So is there any cost control that can be done? I mean, there's talk of now adding another staff member, but that's not in statute, correct?
Correct.
That's
In
just based on
statute
need.
is that we have to check air quality. We have to put out forecasts. We have to approve burners. We have to monitor burns over 2,000 ton. Those are things that are set in rule. And in order to get that work done, the agency then says, this is what we need to get that work done.
So it's looking like an unfunded mandate then.
From the bar graphs you're looking at, that's where we're headed, just because the revenue is uncertain, right? Even the expenditures are uncertain too. It's out of our control. We don't know what those cost of living increases are and that kind of thing. So it's just a very uncertain way to have a fund.
And in the first 7 periods that you show here, 2015 to 2022, you see that variability, but you also see kind of an average flat trend. But then when you look at 22 on, it falls off significantly, and that's being driven by salaries of the mandated staff.
Yes. Because as you could see on this one, the service and supply isn't really driving. I mean,
No,
we're
that's
keeping
flat.
those really low. It's
The only
it's
spikes
this,
there are correlated to spikes in the actual burning.
What do
Like
you mean?
2017, that year, when you go to the fund year, there's a lot more revenue coming in 2017 as well.
This one is the one you're talking about. Well, I mean, you know, it's not as full as some years. But, you know, with a healthy fund balance, those fluctuations, it didn't hurt anything. And, you know, 10 years ago, we had a projection that said that in 2025, I think it was 24 or 25, that the fund balance would be 1.5 million. There was just no way of knowing that, you know, COVID was going to hit and, you know, burning was going to be less, and then inflation was going to go crazy. You know, there was just no way to predict any of that.
So if the permit fee went up, I guess drastically, you know, maybe 50%, how would that impact these numbers, Stacy?
Well, you know, there's no guarantee that raising the fees isn't going to just make it so that the burners can't burn as much, you know?
Okay, sure.
There's no way of knowing. And that's what we need you guys to tell us is from your constituents who you represent, how would fee increases, you know, change the amount that they're going to burn?
Yeah. I think it would absolutely have an impact. And there could be some unintended consequences with that decision with fuel loading across the landscape because the permits have become cost prohibitive, at least at scale. You know, a single permit's one thing. When you're doing this across a large landscape,
and that's the opposite effect of what we're looking to do by increasing the pace and scale and, you know, making the forests near our, you know, populated areas safer. So those are things that, you know, during the rule review process are going to have to be discussed.
Great. Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else on this one? I just have 2 more slides of projections and then okay. All right. This is the 2-year projected revenue chart. This chart breaks out revenue by burner. Over the next 2 years, we project our revenues will stay about the same or a little bit more. Like I said, it's just a high degree of uncertainty about revenues. I've taken a 5-year average and used those in my figures. That's a part of the mystery of projections, right? It's only as good as the information you put in. So that's why I figured the 5-year average would be the best I could do. The blue here is 2025 and orange is 2026. So this one is the Forest Service projecting about 265,000 this year and 275 next year. For BLM, it's about 50,000 this year and 55,000 for 26. Private burners, I've got that about 160,000 and 170 over the next 2 years. And then contracts just show those small increases that are already built into those contracts. Total revenue for this year expected to be 532,000 and then next year 558,000. Any questions on this one? This next one shows those projected revenues from the last slide in blue against the projected revenues for this year in orange. Or expenditures, sorry. The expenditures are in orange. And then this side is 26. So the shortfall for 25, I'm projecting to be 268,000. And in 2026, I project the shortfall will be 391,000. In this one, I've added that extra forecaster there. That's the change in the expenditures. I'm hoping these figures will help inform decision-making during the rule review process that we'll undertake after legislation. So questions on this one?
Yeah, all right. I mean, this is a big problem, right, Stacy? This this simply can't go on this way without dedicated funding from another source. I mean,
Correct.
you're talking about adding another person. That's what, over a 25%, around 25% increase in cost with no additional increase in revenue.
Correct.
And if we were to adjust the revenues through increasing the permit fee, we could very easily end up in a situation where we're disincentivizing the very thing that we need to prevent the problem.
Absolutely. The problem that I face is not hiring another forecaster. I run the risk of burning out my existing forecasters. And then we don't have anybody to help figure out the forecast, keep the program going, and it's in dire straits. And you know, props to my staff who have spent years like this canceling leave because there's just not coverage, right? So it's a problem for sure. Okay, any other questions before I move on?
Yeah, Stacy, I've got a quick question. So just to be clear, I'm going to say ODF, but I mean the state of Oregon is contributing nothing to the program in terms of sustainability or, using your terms, revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's solely funded off of user fees per acre that the fuels are accumulated from.
And ODF has no prescribed burning program that contributes funds either, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The two are two separate programs.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else before I move on? Okay. So in summary, you've seen that the expenses are more than our revenue. The gap's getting larger, and we're definitely looking for solutions on how to get the fund to be fiscally sound. Smoke revenues are unpredictable, looking to see if there are any ways to gain more certainty, and looking for solutions on how we meet the current need for an additional forecaster and keep our aging database working properly. That's all I've got for the budget presentation. So I'll turn it back over to the committee for questions and discussion.
Stacy, quick question. Jen might be on. I know all agencies are somewhat strapped currently, I would say, across the board. I am curious if there's been discussions between DEQ and ODF surrounding potentially a DEQ funded forecaster to bolster your forecast entity.
No, there has not been those conversations. I know they're in the same situation with their programs that we are and that you guys are at DLM, and it's just it's tough times right now.
Gotcha. And I guess just, speaking for the Forest Service, and Stacy, you know this, and the charts show it, we put in a significant amount of money into the program yearly. And I will say we are digging through the couch to cover our invoices as is. So the idea of, unless there's some significant change, and we've actually been in pretty ample times as of late, those are going away rapidly, it seems. I don't think we could really take a significant fee increase by any means and cover it the way we're covering it currently. So we've already started looking at, potential new mechanisms to cover fees associated with, things that would affect industry. So industry that's on, that's BD collection rates, et cetera, to cover the smoke fees, to clear landings and all those parts and pieces. So it's definitely something we should be focusing on and making sure that all folks on this committee have a say in it. Certainly. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll kind of echo what Trevor just said. I mean, for BLM, we're kind of in a transition period as a whole, and I'd say in the 5 to 10 year window, our goal is to increase the amount of prescribed fire, especially in Western Oregon. That being said, right, we are pretty well tapped out because of the way federal budgets are, at least our federal budget has been for a period of time. Um, it would require large scale, state level decisions on budgeting and funding of projects to try and incorporate any significant increase in smoke fees. I think one of the things that jumps out at me is part of it's focused around the question that the state legislature isn't contributing to this fund at all, and at the same time is tapping on to cost of living increases, et cetera, that are raising those prices significantly. And as Chad pointed out, right, that potentially has a huge disincentive for us to continue down this path. So one observation or comment I have is that I think it's going to require some level of legislative or ODF driven funding contribution. At the very least to be covering the inflation rates. If at some point we do a reset that gets us to, funding, let's just say, just keep it easy, 2012 levels of salary and expenses, right? We've obviously had inflation since then. Whatever that window looks like is, at least having a commitment from the state to be covering the inflationary costs associated with it. And in terms of a reset and actually, building that fund back up, I think we're going to have to be very careful and cautious until there's a positive market, I guess, revenue source for us to actually be able to say, yes, we can commit to that. It's going to hurt, but we can do it. The other thought too, I mean, just kind of to maybe help describe where I'm coming from is we're looking at, the fund amount of, $1 million at points, it's not accruing any interest whatsoever. It's not adjusting at all except for, current expenses. But obviously as inflationary pressure pushes that down, it's like basic finance, right?
Yeah.
So those are kind of my thoughts. I don't think there's a really easy solution, but I think at least in the short term, it's going to have to be a shared burden between the state and the partners, the committee members here.
So I would agree with a legislative type of a decision here that might be where we're heading. At least, for our rules. Would you say it's going to kind of start after the legislation's over, and that's in June, I guess?
Yes.
But yeah, it would seem we need some type of working group with some members of this committee and probably ODF and, just the most knowledgeable people we can get to join our committee and look at some alternatives on what we might do. Yeah, it's two choices, increase revenues, decrease cost, but it sounds like everyone who's employed is, really, really necessary, and getting the work done that, or somehow, if there's some way to scale back work a little bit and not offer quite as much, I'm not sure where you'd go from there, but
And that would be a rule review in the rule review process, right?
Sure.
Like if you changed intrusion reporting or that kind of stuff, then we'd have to be in sync with the rulemaking. That what we're saying out there is what we're
what we're doing here. We're following that rulemaking. I need to reread that section of the financial aspect, I guess, of that. But yeah, it, I it's something I don't have an immediate answer for this actually. But I'm willing to,
None of us do.
I'm willing to dig in, try to dig in to learn more. And like I say, get at the bare minimum, it would seem we need some kind of a working group and that would give us some alternatives, that would maybe be acceptable then as we move down the line. But again, that's after June, I guess, because people are kind of locked up in the legislature right now, that business.
Yeah, and you never know what's gonna come out of legislation, as far as agency funding and things like that. So I think waiting to do some of that work is prudent.
Does this have any parallels with wildfire? How wildfire is, because we seem to always be kind of sweating it to pay for everything on wildfires, and get a legislative solution on that, perhaps?
I think there's some discussions that maybe cross paths, and maybe Levi can talk to that more, but it's really two separate issues. This is really
for sure. Yeah. No,
a self-funded program that is supposed to pay for itself.
Yeah, if that's in sentence one of smoke management, I guess that's important. If we're gonna say that, wide-eyed here, looking straight forward, that it's self-funded, that isn't something we can walk away from. Then that's important.
Scott, if we are to be self-funded, then we are going to have to look at a balance of fee increases that are acceptable and potentially a reduction in staff, which is the opposite of what we need.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Then you just do as much work as you can, knowing that the staff is going to be burning out and not supported. And that doesn't seem like a good answer. So
sure.
There needs to be a bigger look and bigger conversation around this.
Yes.
But if we're to be self-funded, there's only two levers to pull, and you can only pull either of them so hard.
Yeah.
And the reality is if we raise the permit fees and disincentivize burning, then it doesn't actually increase revenues at all. You just have fewer permits that cost more money. So you may not even solve the problem by increasing fees.
You might make a bigger problem.
Correct. Correct.
So that's something you need to mull over a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any current levers or influence within the current legislation or legislator that we can do at all?
I would say, Leslie, that right now we have the transportation package that the legislature is working on. That is a focus. There are other issues that, although this is very important to everyone on this call, it's probably not more important than housing or education to the people in that building. And then we have the wildfire crisis and the work group going on there. So I don't think that there's anything that we can do this session on this topic. I could be wrong, and I'd look to Levi if he has a different opinion. I don't see this rising to a priority in this session.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you there, Chad.
Well, then maybe I wonder if we're not going to raise it to a priority in this session, maybe to set us up for the future, is there any, even just bringing this to the attention through a letter, explaining the situation, it could just set us up for the future.
Yeah, and maybe I can take that one, and I'll let Levi or Stacy correct me if I'm getting too far ahead of my skis here. So I think we've got an opportunity ahead of us with the rule review coming up that I think Levi's going to talk on here next. And I think we can use that to help inform us for future legislative sessions. So timing's working out that we're going to get that process underway here soon that we can talk about here coming up in the meeting. One thing I can say is I'm getting up my feet under me in this new role, and this is definitely something I'm going to raise up the flag with Kyle Williams, my boss, so we can start talking through broader solutions if that's what's needed. So just wanted to pass that along, but I think there'll be an opportunity here with the upcoming rule review that this group will really be able to dig into potential solutions and what's needed in future legislative sessions. But I think Chad's correct in his assessment in the current session. Just not sure there's a viable pathway there. It's something we can look out for potentially, but just given the other priorities within this current session, I just don't see this moving up. So.
But I think about for the future too, if it's not the legislature that we could be focusing in on, if there's any way that this committee can provide support to ODF, say with some kind of record saying, here's our concern in 2025, provide that sent and letterheaded to ODF to provide your own support into the future. That could be something we could, is that something we could do?
I would just say that, I mean, yes, clearly, Leslie, that I think would definitely help the department, just to provide some additional awareness. The concerns of this committee, it would be very valuable to have them written down. And we ODF are happy to provide any additional information this committee needs to even help propose solutions. I think we're not going to find any right now, obviously, we all know that, but we're willing to do the work of, do we need to look at the current fees and make a recommendation of what we think those fees might need to be based on current level of work, or what those fees might need to be based off of the additional capacity. Stacy barely mentioned the database that we're working with is ancient. I mean, that is I'm not going to speak for Stacy, but that alone is keeps her extremely busy, and that's not good customer service for Oregonians at all when we're having to provide so much time and effort just to ensuring we can bill folks and send them invoices. So again, if I heard the talks of a subcommittee or a smaller committee off of this to help with some of this work. I think that's this committee has the full ability to start that committee and task someone from ODF to help with that committee, and we'll provide you everything you guys need. We need the advisement from this committee, for sure. And I mean, we're just as concerned. So we want to do everything we can to help make this better as well. So.
Levi, in the meantime, I would encourage ODF to look for partner agencies or anywhere there could be efficiencies, because the reality is we can't just keep throwing money at this problem. We need to see both levers pulled. So any way to identify potential cost savings would be really helpful. And then at the same time, pair that with how do we find potential revenue increases? We need to look at both sides of that equation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll also just add that it makes it a lot easier to ask for revenue when you can demonstrate that you've taken a really authentic look at how you can control costs. It makes the folks paying more comfortable when they know that work has been done prior to coming and asking for more.
Well, might I motion to institute a subcommittee on working on the smoke management fund dean fix, however you want to put it?
Yes, I would vote for that. I think, trying to look down the road, they're really busy with the legislative session with all these bills coming due. But if we could, let's say they release at June, sometime in June or early, it would be good if we could hit the ground running in some way, when people are more available and do some level of work that demonstrates we've thought about it and worked with ODF about it, and this is where we're at. That way we're not just kicking the can down the road or something. We're going to have something that's at the very least kind of reviewing reviewing where we're at and some alternatives to move forward. You have a question, Stacy, or?
No, just
I'm sorry.
wondering what that subcommittee would look like. Because we can't have more than 3 of you. So would it just be 2? I'm kind of looking at Levi for this too.
But is there a limit to the size of a subcommittee?
Well,
it's
3 or
not
more of
everything.
you gathered.
And you get 4 on
I
the
see. We
shoot.
have 5 people, so it's be something less than 5, I guess.
Well,
It would have to
if
be
you have,
2.
yeah,
Otherwise
if
you
you
have
have
public.
3, we would have to have it be public.
Okay. That's a good point.
So, I mean, I think it's a great idea. Any volunteers? Everybody all at once.
Volunteer to be on a subcommittee with other support and ODF support too.
Yeah, and ODF can be, they're not limited to 2, right, Stacy? So you can.
Correct.
Yeah, wonderful.
And I'm available to support this subcommittee with everything you need, and we can bring others on if need be through the session. So you don't necessarily have to wait until June or July to start meeting with the subcommittee.
If we're going to form a subcommittee, I think it would also be helpful to have an idea of how often they're going to report and then how they're going to report to the full committee. So if this subcommittee is formed, I would suggest having like every other meeting, or certainly every meeting of the full committee, there should be a agenda item for a report, but it wouldn't hurt if there are major milestones in between to have an email update go to the committee members.
I agree.
I would volunteer for this, but I think I'm out of volunteering for the day. So I'll just leave that there.
And I would love to see one of our federal partners on that subcommittee.
I would be willing to volunteer. I'm looking at Trevor. I think, I mean, he and I will definitely be chatting about stuff. But it might be more appropriate, Trevor, for you, because you carry such a larger amount of the fees than we do. But I'm willing to take it on if you want to just. Just throw that out there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. My initial thought is happy to provide input to the committee. I guess I'm kind of on the fence whether it's the right place for agency representation into developing, guidance to push into Oregon legislation.
Trevor, I think it's absolutely appropriate, and it's not necessarily guidance to go into legislation. It's currently looking at what levels of revenue could we generate from permit fees. And as one of the biggest contributors through that fee process, I think it's entirely appropriate that you have a seat at the table if you are the one paying the fees. When it
You're the
comes to actual
largest
legislative
payer,
guidance,
yeah.
That's different. But you should be at the table.
No, totally. And I mean, I completely offer to sit at any table that it needs to be sat at as a representative of the Forest Service. So maybe we can leave it as that, whether I'm, a chair of a subcommittee. I think that's a little bit more in question in my mind. So,
And I don't think we need to have chair and co-chair of a subcommittee. It's just a subcommittee with no officer roles. And it's just a pair of a subcommittee looking at expenses and revenues. And as one of the biggest payees into that system, I think it'd be really valuable to have your perspective working with Leslie. Any decisions will be made by the full committee.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Okay, so we have Trevor and Leslie on the working group. Any other discussion on the finances? And I'm thinking we can just go right into the next topic, which is just that rural review planning, and then try to, end the meeting by at least noon, no later than noon.
So yeah, rural review planning, in a sense, we've been talking about that a little bit here, I think, but we're at least some components of that. But so to give you guys a little background, especially Chad and Leslie, our last update, I believe, was March 19th. It was March 2019, before COVID. And if my memory's right, we voted to do these new rules, but correct me if I'm wrong here, Stacy, but I believe Governor Brown said, as COVID started, that maybe these rules would be, hard health-wise on people. And so I think maybe they weren't implemented until probably 2021. Is that correct?
No, in 2019, those were implemented.
They certainly were they certainly are in the right now, because I went out and looked in the rules out there. But anyway, be that as it may, that was when we finished the rule review before, and then we I guess didn't do one for 2024, which would be five. They talk about a 5-year review of rules, and so now we're looking at doing something before 2019. Is that correct, Stacy?
2029 is when we have to have
2029. Yeah.
Yeah. The 10-year review has to be complete by 2029.
Okay.
We did defer that 5-year because in the rule, it states we can just push that off. So we just want to start working on that now, just based on the financial, issues that we're having. It's time that we look at those rules.
Yeah. And, as a first step, it's probably important to go out to, Oregon administrative rules if people aren't real familiar with that, and just see what's on the books right now. And they made more than a couple changes, but two of the changes was to redo the definition of intrusion, to have some amount of pollution that would help us with what we characterize healthy forest. And as you've heard before, people mentioned was 70, I think, micrograms for 1 hour average. And for 24, it was it 34, I think, for 24-hour average. So those were new, those were new. And then an incident was something below the intrusion, smoke, but below the intrusion. And prior to 2019, that language wasn't present. And the other thing they talked about a little bit here in the program was a community response program, and just really going the extra mile to inform those people at risk that, hey, we got to shoulder you guys and gals, and increase our communication in these like they're talking about West Bend or some other places, down by Ashland, they've got lots of smoke problems down there, and to have adequate breathing devices, whatnot, air purifiers, and in other words, don't surprise people, but let people plan for it. And that's a big deal. We have people on here, Oregon Health Association and also DEQ, and it's incredibly important to them. So I think we tried to beef up this community response for certain locales. I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how many how many different kind of city metro areas they worked at, but I think it was around 8 or 9, something like that. And so I think we need to, in this rule review, we probably need to kind of take a look back here, and you might say grade ourselves on those community resource plans, and also the intrusion level. Is 70 and 34, are those the right numbers, or do people, challenge those for either higher or lower, or it's working, it's not working. So I'm not saying that's the end of the rule review process, but I think it's kind of close to a starting point, is to look what we changed in 2019 and just, you might say, grade ourselves on it slightly on how it actually took place. So anyway, yeah, first thing, like I say, if people aren't so aware of these Oregon administrative rules, it'd be good to go out it's under the Department of Forestry, and then under smoke management category there, and it's called Oregon's Smoke Plan, and that's the rules, to my knowledge, that are out there that we're supposedly abiding by here. And of course, as you go through time, we have us, the community members. I'm not sure if the stakeholders are out here, but right now, but they are very active in that process too. So instead of just having 2 meetings a year, no, we had slightly more to go over this data and make sure all the stakeholders, for sure, DEQ and Oregon Health Association that they can sign off on this. It's not probably their most desirable world, but could they live in that world, with better communication and notification and so forth. So that would be what I would say right off the top, is to kind of just review a little bit and then go from there. Then from there you go to, if there's something you don't like, go ahead, Levi.
No, I didn't need to interrupt. I just maybe wanted to just share some thoughts with this group of kind of traditionally how the department has kind of went towards how we've gone towards rulemaking, or kind of the process we've been going. We've formulated a pretty large rulemaking advisory committee, to where we would have the stakeholders, like you mentioned, part of that group. So the largest ones we did was the defining the wildland urban interface, and then obviously the hazard map. And we had several folks that represented different stakeholder groups. And so just sharing that for awareness that, I think what we would vision is this committee potentially, doing the review that you mentioned, proposing, some potential changes to the department and some recommendations, and we would incorporate those into kind of a larger draft rule package that we would present to that rulemaking advisory committee. And of course, someone on this committee, probably the chair, would be the representative for SMAC on that rack. So I might just recommend, maybe your July meeting, I think, is the next meeting, correct?
Yeah, I believe it's late June, early July.
And
Yes.
and maybe that can be, after ledge session, that can be the time where that agenda potentially can be built for this committee to work together and go through some sets of rules of and make those recommendations, and then, bring those to the department as a recommendation for potential changes. That would help us build that bigger package of the rules that we present to that RAC, and maybe even some recommendations on who those stakeholders might be, what representation we think might be good to have on that RAC. So just throwing some thoughts out there for this group to think about.
Thank you. Leslie?
Curious about what the proposed timeline would be. If it's July, we come up with agenda timeline for digging into this process. When are you expecting to form the RAC, want to have those recommendations to ODF from this MAC?
Good question. I mean, there is, the process of providing we'd have to go to the Board of Forestry and ask to do, public hearing of the rules once they're formulated. So, that can't happen until we have an approved, or supported rule package from that RAC. So I think a lot of it is how fast this committee wants to move on those. Once we got a recommendation or from this committee, I think we could set up a RAC fairly quickly. So maybe it's a 2026 year of 2026 to get started.
And then who's DEQ's boss here? The the Oregon Commission? What's their title now? Their acronym?
The EQC.
Pardon me.
The EQC.
Yeah. Environmental Quality Commission. Yeah. Okay. I apologize. It's been a while since I've talked about this, but yeah, I think my recollection was, you're right, Leva. You kind of go before the Department of Forestry, and they in some way sign off, if you're, okay, and then you do this EQC, which is, I guess, the policy head of DEQ maybe, and then you're pretty far along, if you get those two to sign off, I think. Is that correct, Levi?
Right. And again, in thinking Division 48, it does say that we formulate the rules in coordination with DEQ specifically, right, Stacy? So DEQ is a very large player in that.
Oh yeah, huge.
So, yeah.
They actually did I think they were doing the presentation. It's kind of a combo between an ODF person and a DEQ kind of presenting to these policy boards and where we're at. But to answer your question, Leslie, that's a good question. How long does it take? And it might take a different amount of time each time you do it. And I don't know if we can just say, it's 14 months or so. It's kind of how quickly you kind of define what is your changes and meet with people. But oh gosh, it seemed like maybe over 2 years or something, that before they truly signed off in March 2019. But I know I know for sure we met. I tell you, the other thing is we met, not all the meetings were in Salem. We actually met in Sisters once, because again, you're trying to take this out to more people, and have a broad base, So yeah, there was at least one meeting between our 6 months meetings, I think, and maybe there's even two. I doubt if there's more than two, but it's kind of maybe as needed, you're going out and ODF is kind of guiding us here, about making sure we take the appropriate steps here, because they're pretty knowledgeable about that.
Yeah, I'm just curious with working backwards from 2029, the expectation, whole process finished by 2029, and we meet bi-yearly, and we meet twice a year if we're going to have more. It's just one of those expectations moving forward as we look towards setting an agenda at the next meeting. And I also think of like the concurrent process of having a subcommittee looking at the funding challenges, and that adjustments to the rules may be a part of those suggested actions, and how we can have those happen concurrently and work with each other as well.
And I think to add to that, oops, sorry, my camera's off. If we could get the proposed rule package in front of the Board of Forestry by, early in 2028, that would give us the time to do public hearings on the rules, and then, have them by the deadline. So we definitely have time. I'm not saying we need to wait that long, obviously, but I also know everyone's workload. But that would probably be, the latest would be to get them in front of the board by early of 2028. That January meeting, probably.
That's an excellent point. All the public review, even when you think you're about finalize things, you're going through all these steps, and it's, my goodness, it's several steps. So let's see, where are we at here? We're at on the rule review planning we've been talking about, and action items. Would you call this subcommittee an action item, or is that not
Well, I mean, I have an action item around that. So this is what I have for my action items is I am going to finalize the charter and get that sent out and posted wherever it needs to live. And then the other one I have is reaching out to Leslie and Trevor to set up the subcommittee to whatever's convenient for you guys to meet. So those are the two action items that I have down. Shelby, do you have any other action items?
No, those were the only ones I had jotted as well.
Okay. And then I'll also be sending out, like I always do, some dates for the June, July meeting. So I'll be figuring those out too. So I'll add that to my list, dates for the next meeting. And I will update the website with the chair information. And Trevor, do you want me to go ahead and replace Rick with you, or are you maybe thinking someone else may sit on the committee?
Yeah, give me a few days to finalize that before
no problem.
Make you do it twice or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So is there anything else people want to bring up at this point? It looks like we've largely maybe lost our stakeholders here. I'm kind of looking here. It looks like more of the committee members, but is there something else that any one of the folks wants to bring up?
Yeah, Scott, I would just like to take a minute to express my appreciation for Stacy and Shelby and all the ODF staff that helped make this committee run. I look forward to working with you as chair, and I look forward to working with you too, Scott.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're all in this together. I'm, as is right now, I'm not on that committee, but I'm certainly available, if I can add value, into, and that comes to mind for Trevor, Leslie, or whatever, for Chad. I'm available if there's something I can help with. I certainly will on that. But yeah, we have an excellent group, I think, of presenters here. You can tell by going through this meeting, they've spent a chunk of time to come up with some fairly knowledgeable reports for us. So I'm grateful for that. Stacy, anything else you want to bring up at this point, or where are you at?
Yeah, I would just say thanks, Chad. And then just for Trevor to give a big thanks to Rick for all the work he did preparing for this meeting. So, and I just, I'll echo what you said, Scott. We have a great group. So really looking forward to, moving forward and finding some solutions for this incredibly important program.
Okay. So if that's if there's no other comments, then I would move that we adjourn the meeting at this point. It's about 12:40 at this point, and that way people can get on with other activities today, I guess. So thank you very much, and we'll be talking with you, okay?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, drive safe.